Today on Crime Duh, we're going to talk about a guy who disappeared after being picked up by a police officer. First off in Crime Duh, acknowledge the new poster. Now, let's talk about the tragic story of Terrance Williams. Terrance was a young man at 27 years old in 2004 who disappeared from Naples, Florida. Terrance was pulled over by a police officer in January of 2004. Terrance should not have been driving. He was cited for a DUI, and he also had expired registration, so he couldn't drive. So, in what I've seen in those cases, that the police officer may either arrest the offender or they may just basically tow their car and tell them they got to get a ride home. That differs from state to state, I think. I'm not really sure, but in this case, it's important to point out that Terrance Williams was not currently drinking, and that was the reason for his traffic stop. He had a prior DUI conviction and therefore had a suspended license, and he shouldn't have been driving. That's why Officer Calkins drove Terrance to the Circle K convenience store. They were pulled over near a cemetery. The cemetery employees stated that Terrance got in Officer Calkins' car and they drove away. Officer Calkins eventually returned to the site of the cemetery about 75 minutes later and then moved the car from the cemetery to a better parking spot. And after that, Terrance has disappeared. We have no idea what happened to him. Now, what's really bizarre in this case is there's actually another person who was last seen when Officer Calkins gave them a ride. His name was Felipe Lopez, and he's also disappeared. So this Officer Calkins is either extremely unlucky or there's something going on there. But this case is 20 years old, and we have no idea. And it doesn't appear to be any close to a resolution. But essentially, this deputy, Officer Calkins, gave two people's rides, and they both disappeared, and he was the last person seen with them. Which, this is very bizarre, and there's definitely, I've never heard of a case like this. So, when Terrance Williams' family was doing the investigation, they came across Felipe Lopez, who had disappeared under very similar conditions. He was not a legal immigrant, so that was another reason why that Officer Calkins picked up Felipe Lopez and couldn't let him drive. It's possible he didn't even have a valid driver's... It's most likely Felipe Lopez did not have a valid driver's license. About 7 months after the disappearance of Terrance Williams, Officer Calkins was eventually fired from the police department he worked at. But as of this day in 2024, there's been no formal charges against Officer Calkins relating to the disappearances of both of these men. It appears Officer Calkins has not really made himself public about the disappearance of either of these two men either. Officer Calkins originally didn't basically said he didn't have any recollection of giving Terrance Williams a ride, and eventually he basically said, but then eventually when he was asked to do a police report, he did say he dropped him off at the Circle K gas station. The problem is the Circle K gas station, when they looked for their surveillance, they didn't see Officer Calkins or Terrance Williams at all. It's very suspicious. Officer Calkins was given a polygraph and he passed it, but it basically is responsible for both of these guys' disappearance, Felipe Lopez and Terrance Williams. It's a really kind of scary case. You know, you trust a police officer. Their disappearances are over 20 years old. They happen within a couple months of each other. Felipe Lopez's disappearance was about 3 months earlier than Terrance Williams, but both of these young men have been disappeared for over 20 years, and there really has not been any resolution in this case. In 2018, actor Tyler Perry got involved and offered a substantial reward for information in the case. Here's a clip of Tyler Perry talking about the case and why he and why he's using his celebrity fame to bring attention to the disappearances of these two men.
So important to you and so many others. In Lindsay's piece, you first learned about this case through that TV episode. What made you want to get involved, Tyler?
Well, just looking at Terrance's mother and how she was so passionate about it, about finding out what happened to her son, and her pain made me want to get involved. And let me just say thank you to GMA for giving this story attention, because these men have been gone for a very, very long time, and it's been very difficult to get attention in national news. I even had one reporter say to me that my victims were not sympathetic. So Robin and everybody there at GMA, thank you so much for giving these people attention, because they absolutely deserve it. This is wrong and this is injustice, and we got to fight for it. And I also want to say about the Collier County Sheriff's Department, there are some detectives down there that have been amazing, that have been standing with Marcia and trying to get through this. So this is not about us against the police. This is about finding justice for these two men.
Again, this case is very unusual in terms of, not only you basically have two people who disappeared after last speaking to a cop. And it's not as super well known as some other disappearances. Honestly, that's because these two guys, Felipe Santos was an immigrant, and Terrance Williams, he was working at Pizza Hut at the time, so none of these guys had a lot of money, so their cases likely were not given as much coverage as someone like a Murray. And this case is cold, and it could use all the help it can get to solve this and find these two guys, Terrance and Felipe. So if you have any, hopefully this video helps bring resolution to the case. Thanks for watching.